Hello everyone! Sorry for not recording new video for such a long period of time. You may know that we have some problems with power in Odessa, really big problems. Some areas did not have any power for about 14 to 18 hours per day. I moved to my friend's house, a friend who lives now in Lviv with his family, and he allowed me to live here for maybe a month or maybe 2 months. And since his apartment is located in the city center of Odessa, in the very city center of Odessa, there are much less problems with power in this apartment and in this area. David recently wrote me an email suggesting a subject for a new video. Thanks a lot, David. A very good suggestion. If any of you have suggestions for my new videos, leave them in the comments or write me email at my email address. Western way of life for a long period of time. Let's discuss it. In order to compare it more correctly, the Western way of life and the way how people live in Ukraine, someone has to live in Europe for, let's say, not maybe a long period of time, but for some time. I can compare since I lived in not the worst European country for over 1 year. It was back in 2016. I lived in Netherlands, in the city called Haarlem, which is about 20 kilometers away from Amsterdam. It was more than 6 years ago, but I'm sure that nothing has changed since that time. And Netherlands is considered to be one of the best places to live in Europe. And Dutch people are considered to be the luckiest people to live in such a good country. It is indeed a pretty nice country, except if you want to rent an apartment, it's a really big problem. There are no apartments to rent there. But I worked there by invitation from one company, so I had a place to live. But many people, even many locals, struggle there with finding even to rent an apartment. So we're not talking about Netherlands, we compare European way of life with Ukrainian way of life. And the first that I must admit, because I have been in all European countries except Finland. I don't know why I haven't been in Finland, but it is located in such a way that you have to go there directly. And Finland is the country that I haven't visited in Europe up to this time. But I've been even to those very small countries like San Marino, Andorra, Luxembourg, Liechtenstein, and maybe Gibraltar. I haven't been to Gibraltar because you need a UK visa to go there. But even in those small countries, I lived for a couple of days. So the first that I must admit, the quality of fruits and vegetables in Europe and in Ukraine. Fruits and vegetables are absolutely different, and they are much more delicious in Ukraine. I like chicken very much, for example. And in Netherlands, it was impossible to find good chicken, even though they export quite a lot of chicken to other countries worldwide. But that chicken, you eat it and it is some sort of meat with water, and it doesn't taste like chicken. No, I mean it is chicken, but it tastes absolutely differently. I asked my Dutch friends, for example, why chicken tastes so differently from Ukrainian chicken. And they told me that Dutch people grow chicken for about 4 to 6 weeks and then they just sell it. In Ukraine, chicken may be grown for maybe half a year. So meat is much more tastier, and let's say meat is much more like meaty. It doesn't have any water in it. And it's not only about chicken, it's almost about all kinds of other foods, especially tomatoes and cucumbers. In Europe, well, except maybe Spain and some southern part of Italy, tomatoes and cucumbers are plastic all over Europe. And if you eat tomato and cucumber in Ukraine, well, it is real tomato and cucumber. Yes, in many European countries you can buy like fruits and vegetables directly from farmers who grow them more correctly. But it's pretty complicated, and the price for such fruits and vegetables are much higher than those from supermarkets. My friend lives with his family in Poland now, and they cannot cook very famous dish, borscht, because tomatoes and beetroot are absolutely different from those that we have in Ukraine. And you just cannot cook that borscht. It is not red. It is some sort of water when you use Polish tomatoes and Polish beetroot. And Polish fruits and vegetables are not the worst in Europe. If you compare it to tomatoes, for example, in France, or with tomatoes in Netherlands and Belgium, it's absolutely different tomatoes. So Ukraine definitely wins in terms of food. Second, communication with people. It is absolutely different when you communicate with people in Europe and the way you communicate with people in Ukraine. It is very common, for example, in Ukraine, when you come to your friend's house without any notification. You just feel like going to your friend's house, so you just maybe going from your work and you can drive to your friend's house without any problems. I am talking about friends, which you have maybe 1, 2, 3 or 4 friends, not your pals. And you can go to your friend's house at any time without any notice. In most European countries, you must schedule such appointment with your friend, maybe several days in advance or maybe even several weeks in advance. And that's something that Ukrainian people do not understand and, well, do not want to understand. Third, celebrations. Celebrations are a very important part of any person in Ukraine and in former Soviet Union. If we are talking about celebrations, they take place mostly in cafes or restaurants, which are much cheaper than in all European countries. As you know, HoReCa business earns most money from alcohol, from selling alcohol. In Ukraine, if you celebrate your birthday, for example, or if you have a party for like some corporate event, you can and you do bring your alcohol with you. You just agree with that cafe or restaurant or a hotel where this, let's say, event is taking place, that you will order food from them, they will cook that food, and price for those dishes will be about 25 times cheaper than in normal menu. And alcohol and some, let's say, sweets like cakes, you can order yourself and you can bring it with you when you celebrate your birthday or when you have some kind of corporate event. So celebrations in Ukraine are much cheaper and much more affordable than in all Europe. And since it is cheaper, we can celebrate and have fun much more often than if someone would live in Europe. Fourth, people in Europe versus people in Ukraine. People in Europe are a bit different from people in Ukraine. For example, in Germany, if you don't like something with your neighbor, German people usually call the police and then police come to your neighbor and tries to solve the problem. And in Germany, it is considered absolutely normal way of doing that. For example, my friend lives next to Dortmund in Germany. He changed oil in his car himself. He changed it in his garage, in his house. And maybe 50 grams of oil spilled on the ground which is right next to his house. Several hours later, police came and fined him for those several grams that were spilled on the road next to his house, those several grams of oil, because some neighbor called the police and said that he is polluting the neighborhood. I don't know your opinion, but would you want to live next to such neighbors? I wouldn't. In Odessa, most of my neighbors are friends. Okay, some of them are, I would not want to say who they are, but most people that live next to me are my friends. And even those people whom I do not consider friends would never do that. In Ukraine, for example, if police would be driving by and if they see like a very big spot of car oil on the road or on the ground, and if they ask neighbors whose car spilled that oil, nobody would tell anything to the police, even those people whom I do not consider as my friends that live next to me. Nobody would tell that. In fact, in Ukraine, nobody from police would ask this question. This is just a wrong question. Nobody would tell which car it was. But in Germany, It is absolutely normal to call the police and say that your neighbor spilled some oil, some grams of oil on the road next to his house. So mentality of people in Ukraine and mentality of people in European countries are, let's say, not absolutely different, but they are different. And many Ukrainian people would not understand mentality of European people actually. Our people are very friendly and in most cases they are willing to help in all situations. Something the same I would say maybe in Spain and in Italy, but you would have to live maybe for 20 years to become like a local, and still I do not believe that you will be like 100% local in Spain or Italy, maybe even after living there for 20 years. So I would say that maybe 20% of people would stay in Europe, maybe 25, maybe up to 30%, but I think more accurate number is 20% of people would stay in Europe after all this situation in Ukraine is over, after our victory. And I think that 80% would come back from Europe, back to their homes in Ukraine. Even those people who lost their houses and whose houses have been destroyed even completely. I think 80% will come back. If we are talking about those people who moved to Canada or to United States, I would say that maybe 50% would come back, maybe 40% would come back, and 50 or 60% would stay there. Many Ukrainians who decided to move to Canada or to United States, since it is far away from our homeland, I think half of those people would stay there, and half maybe would come back. And it is mostly because of English. Many people know some English and it would take several months for them to perfect it, maybe half a year, and they would integrate in the society of those countries. I can say about some of my friends who moved to other countries, who moved to Europe, to United States. So one family who moved to United States, they are not planning to come back. Another family moved to Canada, but I know that they want to move to United States, because weather in Canada is something that they were not prepared for. It is really cold there, something like 35 degrees below zero. I will put here how much it is in Fahrenheit. And it's really, really cold. People who lived in Odessa, they are not used to such temperatures. And one more man whom I know for quite a long period of time, he moved to Spain and he plans to stay there. He is a very good mechanic. He repaired my car, he repaired my friend's cars, so he is a very, very good specialist. He earned good money in Odessa, and I am sure he will be able to earn very good money in Spain if he decides to stay there. Other people whom I know and who moved to Europe and to other countries, they want to come back to Ukraine as soon as possible. My hairdresser, for example, who moved to Poland and then moved to Germany, she works in Germany now and makes 3 times more money than she used to make in Odessa. And in Odessa she worked illegally, she worked just at home. And in Germany she has an official job, and if she continues to stay there and to work, she will have a guaranteed pension. And she says that even if she earns 5 or 6 times more money in Germany, after our victory, she will move back to Ukraine as soon as we win. And many other people say and think absolutely the same way. Or my neighbor, for example, who specialized on car electronics. He is a, how do you say it, car electrician who deals with everything, with all electrical parts in cars. And he is in Belgium now. He earns 5 times more repairing cars in Belgium than he used to earn in Odessa. But after our victory, he will move back to Odessa. He will come back to Odessa as soon as we win. And many other people are like that. Sorry once again for not recording video for quite a long time. I am recording this video on 3rd of January. I want to wish you all a very happy new year. Don't forget to ask questions in comments to this video. Don't forget to ask questions by email. If any of you need my personal assistance, help or advice, please email me at my email address, and I always glad to help those people who really need help. I want to wish you a very happy new year once again. I wish new year brings all of us lots of joy, happiness, tranquility, peace, and of course lots of health and wealth. I also would want to thank all of you who donated at my PayPal address, and those of you who donated I emailed personally thanks from people to whom we helped. So I wish you all good luck, joy, peace, and of course stay healthy and wealthy.